life doesn't ask permission before it breaks you. The job you lose, the person who leaves, the diagnosis you never saw coming, none of it waits until you're ready. But for over 2,000 years, a group of philosophers faced the exact same chaos we face today, and they didn't just survive it, they mastered it. Today, you're going to learn the 8 rules they lived by, the rules that turned ordinary men into unshakable ones. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while burying his own children. Epictetus was born a slave and became one of the most respected teachers in Rome. Seneca was exiled, betrayed, and eventually forced to take his own life by a tyrant he once mentored. These were not men who had easy lives. They were men who had brutally hard ones, and it was precisely because of that hardship that they built a philosophy strong enough to withstand anything. Stoicism was never about suppressing emotion or pretending pain doesn't exist. It was about building an inner fortress so solid that no external storm could tear it down. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn 8 rules from that fortress. Rules that, if you actually apply them, will change the way you respond to every hardship for the rest of your life. The first rule the Stoics lived by is this: separate what is yours from what is not. Epictetus opened his entire philosophy with this single idea, and he considered it the foundation of everything else. Some things are within your power, your thoughts, your judgments, your effort, your reactions. Everything else, other people's opinions, the economy, the weather, whether someone loves you back, whether you get the promotion, is not within your power. Most human suffering comes from confusing these 2 categories. We spend our lives trying to control what we cannot control and neglecting what we actually can. Think about how much energy you've wasted worrying about what someone thinks of you, or replaying a decision someone else made that you had no say in. The Stoics would tell you, stop. Redirect every ounce of that energy toward the only thing you actually own, your response. When you stop fighting the uncontrollable and start mastering the controllable, you stop feeling like a victim of your life and start feeling like the author of it. The second rule is memento mori. Remember that you will die. This sounds morbid at first, but the Stoics used it as one of the most liberating tools available to a human mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself constantly that he could leave this life at any moment, and he used that truth not to despair, but to focus. When you actually absorb the fact that your time is finite, the trivial arguments stop mattering so much. The grudges lose their weight. The fear of what strangers think of you shrinks. You start asking a different question before every decision. If this were one of my last days, would I still spend it this way? Death, for the Stoics, wasn't the enemy of a good life. It was the very thing that gave life urgency and meaning. Ignoring mortality doesn't make you safer from it, it just makes you sloppier with the time you have. The third rule is premeditatio malorum, the practice of negative visualization. Before a journey, the Stoics would mentally rehearse everything that could go wrong: delays, storms, theft, injury, not to become pessimists, but to strip fear of its power. When you've already imagined the worst-case scenario and mentally walked through how you'd handle it, reality can no longer ambush you. Seneca advised his friends to occasionally live as though they had already lost everything. Sleep on a hard floor, eat plain food, wear simple clothes, so that poverty would never again feel like a monster hiding in the dark. It was a rehearsal for hardship, done in times of comfort, so that when real hardship arrived, it would already feel familiar. Most people are terrified of misfortune precisely because they've never let themselves imagine it. The Stoics removed that fear by staring directly at it, calmly, before it ever knocked on the door. The fourth rule is that virtue is the only true good. In a world obsessed with wealth, status, and pleasure, the Stoics made a radical claim. None of these things are actually good or bad in themselves. They are what the Stoics called indifferents, things that can be used well or used poorly, but that hold no power over your character unless you give it to them. What truly matters, what is genuinely and unconditionally good, is virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. A wealthy man who is cruel is not living well. A poor man who is honest, courageous, and fair is living an excellent life by Stoic standards, regardless of his bank account. This rule frees you from the exhausting chase of external validation. Your worth was never meant to be measured by what you own or what people think of you. It was always meant to be measured by the quality of your character, which is the one thing that can never be taken from you by circumstance. The fifth rule is that you don't control events, but you always control your response to them. This is perhaps the single most quoted Stoic idea, and for good reason. It's the hinge on which the entire philosophy turns. Epictetus taught that it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about those events. Two people can lose the same job. One spirals into despair, convinced their life is over. The other treats it as an unexpected opportunity to rebuild something better. The job loss was identical. The suffering was entirely self-generated by the interpretation. This doesn't mean you pretend bad things are good. It means you recognize that between the event and your emotional reaction, there is a gap, and in that gap lies your freedom. The moment you understand that no one and nothing can make you feel a certain way without your consent, you take back a kind of power that most people never even realize they have. His sixth rule is embracing discomfort on purpose. The Stoics believed that comfort left unchecked makes people weak, anxious, and fragile, not because comfort itself is evil, but because a life that has never been tested has no idea what it's actually capable of enduring. This is why Stoic practitioners deliberately chose discomfort sometimes. Cold showers, fasting, hard physical labor, simple living, not out of masochism, but as training. Just as a soldier trains before battle, the Stoics trained their tolerance for hardship before hardship arrived uninvited. If you've never voluntarily said no to comfort, an involuntary loss of comfort will devastate you. But if you've practiced discomfort on your own terms, when life takes something away from you without asking, you'll already know you can survive it, because you've survived it before on purpose. The seventh rule is to focus obsessively on the present moment. Anxiety lives in the future. Regret lives in the past. But your actual power, your actual life, only ever exists right now, in this exact moment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself again and again that the past is gone and the future is uncertain. So the only rational place to place his attention was on the task directly in front of him. This doesn't mean you never plan or never reflect. It means you stop living as a hostage to a future that hasn't happened, or a past that can no longer be changed. Every time you catch your mind spiraling into what if, or drowning in if only, the Stoic response is the same: bring yourself back to now. What can you do right this second with the one moment you actually have control over? That single redirection, practiced daily, quiets more suffering than almost any other habit a person can build. And before we get to the eighth and final rule, the one that ties everything else together, if this is resonating with you even a little, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps this philosophy reach more people who need to hear it, and it costs you nothing but a second of your time. All right, let's finish this. The eighth and final rule is amor fati, the love of fate. This is arguably the most advanced and most difficult Stoic teaching, because it doesn't just ask you to accept what happens to you, it asks you to actively love it. not to tolerate your circumstances through gritted teeth, not to merely endure them, but to embrace them as necessary material for your own growth. Nietzsche, heavily influenced by Stoic thought, described amor fati as wanting nothing to be different, not forward, not in all eternity. The Stoics believe that everything that happens to you, even the painful things, even the tragic things, can become fuel if you choose to use them that way. The obstacle doesn't just get out of your way. The obstacle becomes the way. Every hardship becomes an opportunity to practice courage. Every loss becomes an opportunity to practice acceptance. Every betrayal becomes an opportunity to practice forgiveness and strength. This is the final transformation the Stoics were after, not a life without pain, because that life doesn't exist for anyone, but a life where pain no longer has the power to break you, because you've trained yourself to metabolize it into wisdom. Bend, if you take nothing else away from these 8 rules, take this. The Stoics were not cold, emotionless robots suppressing their humanity. They were men who felt deeply, lost deeply, and grieved deeply, and who built, through discipline and daily practice, an inner strength that let them keep standing, no matter what life threw at them. That strength wasn't given to them. It was built, rule by rule, choice by choice, day by day. And it can be built by you too. Start with one rule this week. Practice separating what's in your control from what isn't. Notice how much lighter you feel. Then move to the next and the next, until all 8 become part of who you are. Not just ideas you watched in a video, but a way of living that nothing, not even the worst life can throw at you, will ever be able to fully break. If this video helped you even a little, do me a favor and hit subscribe, because there's a lot more of this coming and I don't want you to miss it. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 8 rules you're going to start practicing today. And if you know someone who's going through something hard right now, send this to them. Sometimes the right words at the right moment change everything. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next one.